welcome back. Got our second fly coming up. The last one we did the 10 at 2. This one here is the Rainbow Riffle Special. It's a long-winded name, but I'll explain where it got its name as I'm doing the tying, and we'll get right into it here. Get zoomed in, and right to the tying we'll go. Let's see, that looks pretty good right there. Get this one out of the vise. To start out, we're going with the Daiichi 2461 size 2 for the back hook. And we'll get our thread base down. Same as always, you're going to find your reference point where the barb of the hook starts to come up, and then that's where you end your thread. That's where your material starts. I'm going to grab a good marabou plume. This is olive brown. This is a pretty bulky piece of marabou here. Measure it out just a little bit longer than the length of the hook, and lay this on top. 1, 2, 3, and then just kind of go over and tighten this up. Most all of my tails that I put in, for at least with the marabou tails, you know, some of the deceiver ones I don't flash that much, but these ones here, for some reason I always have put internal flash in with my marabou tails, and I almost always do 2 plumes just to add a little bit of bulk. Even back when I first started tying, you know, and I was just doing regular woolly buggers, I'd still, I think back then I was using crystal flash or whatever it may have been. I'd still always have some internal flash in the tail just to kind of make it stand out a little bit. Just sexy the fly up just a touch. But there's our first one. We got our flash tied in, and strip all of this excess off right there, and then we'll go ahead with our tail. The top portion, even or slightly longer with the top plume. It's not a huge part of the fly, or it's not going to make or break your fly if it's a little bit short. I just like it to be even or right at that length. And you see we have a nice bulky tail. When the water hits this, it's going to slender down slightly, but it's not going to disappear on you. Still going to be able to get a good bit of motion out of the tail on this, but like I said, it's not going to disappear completely. Clean this up. Now I'm going to get my dubbing loop set. The dubbing that the way that I dub this body is unique. I've never done this with any fly before, and it just gives you a little bit more motion, and I'll explain it as I'm going, but I'm going to just start by, I had to grab my loop tool there, but whenever you make a dubbing loop, you can use a thread splitter and just go right down the center of your thread and you'll get the same result. I just like using the dubbing loop personally. I've always used it and it just kind of sticks with me. But start it a little bit forward onto your hook, and then there's your, let's see if I can rotate this around, there's your loop right there. This is what you're looking for. And then you have it tied in with your thread. Then you can advance your thread to the front and then just put in a half hitch. That'll keep you locked in place. And then I'm going to grab my bobbin cradle and spin this around. Have my thread out of the way. Now, as I spin this around, you can see that little knob that's on the vise right there. I have one end of it wrapped around, or one side of my thread wrapped around that knob. That just keeps me from having to split it later on after I'm done working with my material and I'm ready to put the material into the dubbing loop. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and explain what I'm going to be doing with this body. I'm going to get my lid out of the way here. This is just regular ice dub, olive brown. Probably my favorite dubbing material to use with the streamers. It's just so easy to work with. It goes great in the dubbing loop. Easy to manipulate. It's just really user friendly, and it really makes a good looking body. So what you do is you just kind of build a little bit of taper. This is going to be in the top of my dubbing loop. This here at the bottom, obviously, is going to be at the bottom. And you build a little bit of taper to where it's a little more sparse and thinner up at the top, and then it kind of wedges to the bottom. Right here I have this Sanyo's Shaggy Dub, and what I'm going to do with this is just take a few strands and just kind of lay this throughout the dubbing that I already have in place. I'll keep that open because we're going to be using it again. Now this can be the tricky part right here because it wants to shift and slide on you a little bit, but it's alright. You can manipulate that once it's in the loop. So you pull your loop back, get your material in here, and it's going to try to run away from me, but I think we got it. Yep, we're good. So now you can move this around as you see fit. Now we'll zoom back in now that we explained what we have with the dubbing. As you see fit, you can move this around. So if I think it's too bulky right here, I can kind of slide this up or move things how I want it. This looks pretty good. It has a pretty nice uniform taper to it. And then you just pinch your thread right here, spin your dubbing loop tool, and then let it go. And you can see all of this stuff, the Shaggy Dub, the Ice Dub, forms a nice little rope right through there. And you don't want to go extremely tight with this. Usually I just do the one spin. If I have to, I'll add a little bit more, but for the most part I like it still pretty loose, because if you go real tight, it's gonna trap all of this Shaggy Dub within the body, and you rob your fly of some motion that way. So I try to stay loose on my loop. This one stayed pretty clean. A lot of the dub is out, but I'll just run my bodkin through it, pick it out just a little bit, just slightly. And there we have our body. And this just adds a little bit of motion. I mean, like I said, it's something new, unique to this fly that I haven't done with any other ones in the past. Just kind of came up with it. I ordered the material almost by mistake when it came in. I was like, well, I thought I ordered something different, but no, that was what I ordered. So I mean, I've been trying to find different ways to use it, and this is one that seems to work pretty well. it just adds a little bit of bulk, a little bit of motion to the body, and I've been pretty happy with the results that I've gotten on this. Next we're going to take, and if I can get it out of the package here, stand by. You know, it's not wanting to cooperate, so we'll just go at it this way. This is just micro lateral scale, just one strand of it, and you'll take this right from where your thread's at the front of the hook and run it part way through your tail. Tie this in, and then I'll wrap it back around on this side, and all of this is just a lateral line. Once it's wrapped in, measure it out halfway through the tail, go ahead and snip it, and that one got a little bit wild on me. I'll have to peel this back some. As we throw our other material into, it's gonna lay into place there. It's already doing a lot better. This is the rainbow trout version. For the pink lateral lines, I use this Steve Farrar's flash blend. A little goes a long way with this, so you can be pretty sparse with it, and it's the same way that we tied in the lateral lines. Take this on the same path that your lateral scale went on and tie it on one side, fold it over to the other, and just tie this in. Now with this, I'm going to go about to the quarter mark on the tail. Try not to cut your lateral scale. And I'll snip this off. And there you can see, let me see, that one's a little bit wild. I stay a little bit more sparse on the back side with the flash blend than I do on the front. I just like to build a taper as I go to the front of my fly. Where did that one get to? There we go. One's not wanting to cooperate, but it doesn't really matter. The second it gets wet, it's going to do what it wants to anyhow. That one's pretty sparse. We'll go with this one here. We're going to add some bulk to the top of this fly, top and bottom of this fly, and break up the colors just a little bit to give a little more of a rainbow trout look. I do these in brown trout, whitefish. I haven't really done much anything with brookie or anything like that. Usually just the three. Or I'll do them in all white as well. But this was the original that I did, so this is what we're gonna tie for you guys today. And there's your bulk. Spin your marabou, trim. For the bottom one, we're gonna go with white. Get this all picked out how we want it. Rip off the excess. Tips are all nice and even. Flip our vise upside down. I'm gonna measure this out just to make sure that, I mean, they're pretty close to the same length. That's close enough. And then tie this one on as well. Spin your marabou, nice clean cut. There is the back half of the Rainbow Riffle Special. Just kind of peel this back so it's out of your way. And comfortable whip finish. Back to my drawer full of pens here. I got just a olive pen. We'll just touch our gel spun thread up a little bit. Once again, it's not critical that you do this. You can leave it all white, that's fine. I just kind of do it to, I don't know, just me being picky, I guess. But I leave the bottom portion white, the top olive, green, gray, whatever. You can use any color you want, really. It's not gonna be a huge deal breaker if you run a different color on that. For the front hook, we're going with the Daiichi 2461 size 1. I already tied in the articulation wire to save a little bit of time. And that should work right there. I like that. Kind of even this out some. There, I didn't like how that was sitting in the vise. So we're going to take this bead, same thing, one bead with this one, like I do with 90% of my flies, or 90% of my articulated patterns. And we're going to run our wire through the eye of the back hook. So this fly came about, the long-winded name of it, last fall. My dad and uncle came out to visit me here in Montana, and we went down and spent a week on the Madison and a week on the Blackfoot, and we were after the fall run for the spawning browns, and my uncle just kept giving me a lot of grief, telling me that he just wanted to catch rainbows. That's all he was after. He wanted to catch rainbow trout. And I kept telling him, I was like, well, the second you hook one of these big browns up here, I said, you're going to forget all about those rainbow, and you're not going to care about catching them anymore. Well, we get into this one run, and he is just absolutely slaying rainbows left and right, and he's just tickled pink because one, he's catching rainbow. He does love rainbow trout. He loves the way that they look, and two, he can give me a lot of shit at the same time because he's catching them, you know. And he looked up at me and Dad, and he said, this one run that he was fishing, he goes, I dubbed this rainbow riffle, and just looked at us and was laughing hysterically. And we were fishing a Kelly Gallup pattern, the barely legal, and like I said, he was just absolutely slaying fish on that pattern. But there was a lot of places we were fishing, and it was only, you know, maybe a foot of water that we were pulling fish out of. And anybody that's familiar with the barely is a phenomenal fly. It has a weighted head on it, and you get hung up a decent amount when you're fishing water that shallow. So what I wanted was something that looked like a barely, acted like a barely, but was weightless, and that's where this fly came about. So we're anxious to see what it's going to do at Rainbow Riffle this fall coming up when they come back out. But there's the background of that fly, where it originated from. For the skirt on this one, it's the same that I do with the majority of my streamers. I just take the ends of saddle hackle or a good slopping feather and put those in just to cover up my connection. And then with this one, it's a little bit different. Instead of having one on each side, I do one kind of canted on the top left, top right, and the white on the bottom, just to go with the rainbow theme throughout the fly. Now we're done with the, get that feather out of the way. We're done with the nylon thread. We're going to swap back over to the GSP. I'm going to run a couple real tight thread wraps over the connection wire, just to ensure that it's not going to slip on us. I've never had, well, I've had one of these slip, and it was probably my fault that it did wind up slipping on me. It was a late night, that's all I'll say about that. Once again, we're going to form our dubbing loop. Where did I put my tool at? There it is. Throw this loop in, and we're going to half hitch real quick. Same thing as the back hook. You can zoom out just a little bit in case you missed a portion on the back hook, but it's going to be the same thing. Just take out your ice dub, lay it down on the table, form your wedge, thinner at the top, wider at the bottom. That looks pretty good right there. Grab our shaggy dub and just lay this throughout our ice dub. I got a little thick right there. Kind of spread that out some. One more little pinch. May have gotten carried away with the shaggy dub just a little bit. I like to keep it a little sparse, but I think we should be alright. It's right on the border of being too thick, but we'll see how it turns out once we spin it. Get this in here. Oh yeah, that's going to work out good. Alright, I didn't show this. I was zoomed in too far the last time. So I'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see what we got with the dubbing loop tool. Come out. Okay, and then I'm pinching right here on my thread. And then I just spin this real quick, stop it from spinning, release, and everything wraps around your thread. Everything's locked into place, and then you can manipulate this as you see fit. You know, the one spot up here was a little thin. I kind of picked that out. This down here, I kind of have some stuff trapped, so you can manipulate it before you start to spin your body. And I'll take it right there. Started getting a little thick, started rushing ahead, so we're going to take a little bit off. Easier to take it off than it is to add it. Get back into the fly here so you can see what we have going on. This one got a little bit sloppy. Not a huge deal. All we got to do is grab our bodkin, run it through here, pick this material out, and we'll be good to go. Probably spun that just a little bit too tight. But nothing a little bobbin work can't fix. Bodkin. I'm sitting here looking at my bobbin, and the mice aren't running in the same direction. There you go. We can see a nice thick picked out body. It's going to give us a lot of motion, a lot of action. And then we're just going to mirror once again what we did on the back. Take a piece of lateral scale. Find the piece that I was using earlier. There it is. then I just run this a little bit past where my back one started. Pinch it right here. Just make nice loose wraps. Don't tighten anything down just yet until you have everything in place how you want it. And then you can tighten up at the end. I'm going to trim some of this stuff up. It's going to irritate me. So we'll just get rid of this. That's a little cleaner. Alright, so we'll measure this out just a little bit past where the last one started. Throw that on there. Now, like I said, when I was doing the back hook, the flash blend is going to be a little bit thicker on the front hook than it is the back, and it's just a proportion thing, you know. Add bulk to the front hook. Add bulk as you move from the back to the front. You just want to constantly be adding bulk. It gives a little bit of a better taper, a better profile, and seems to swim a little bit better as well. Fold this over. And then we have our lateral line. About a 1/4 inch past where your last one ended, or a 1/4 inch past the eye of the hook, whichever way you want to measure it out. Just whatever reference point you pick, just try to stay consistent throughout all of your flies on that. And we have our lateral lines both working together on the front and back hook. Kind of peel this back some, and then grab your marabou plumes, and we're going to stack top and bottom again. Peeling off all the excess. And then when you measure this one out, when it folds back, it's going to be right where you tied in, or a little bit past where you tied in your back hook marabou stack. Trim that one off. Same thing, white on the bottom. Just prepping this plume right now. Measure it out pretty close. That was a little wild. Must have been sitting in the package a little funky. Loose wrap, and kind of cinch it down. Just kind of clean this up a little bit. Okay. That's looking pretty good. 2 more steps and we'll put a bow on this fly. It'll be done. We're going to form a bulky head on this fly to finish it, and then we're going to throw some just 7mm eyes on it. This is laser dub olive. You can run this stuff through a comb if you want. Kind of clean it up, make it a little bit easier to tie in, or you can just kind of pick it out. Whichever you do, I mean, it's not, either way works. Set your dub right on the top. And before we fold that back, come on here just a little bit. Before we fold that back, we're going to put our bottom portion on too. And you can see I'm just working with the Sanyo's white laser dub. Peel your marabou out of the way. Get this measured out and then tie it in. Now I'll fold both of these back, and you don't necessarily have to tie on top of it, just in front of it, and it'll peel back on its own. We're going to throw one more stack of each on there, and then we're going to brush it out real good to where it seems like if you tie down on top of it, it just creates a little bit of a bump, and then, you know, you wind up having unnecessary bulk that you really don't want to work with. It's a lot tougher to work with too once you get that bump in there. So we're going to throw this other stack on. There you go. And you can see it's starting to lay back really nice for us. Grab a little bit of white. There we go. Now I'll peel this back, and on this part, just right in front of the eye. I mean, as close as you can get it, as snug as you can make it, and then finish it off. Cut your thread, we're good to go. Next thing we're going to want to do, I just have an old toothbrush that I've cut the bristles off on. It makes a phenomenal tool for brushing this stuff out. It doesn't grab as much, but you can still, to where it's not going to peel a bunch of your material out. It just kind of blends it in real nice, real smooth. You know, the last video I did, I used a little gun cleaning tool right there. That tends to be a little grabbier, and you can wind up pulling a lot of your material out. This is just a lot softer, it blends a lot better. You can see, I mean, just, what was that, 30 seconds of brushing, and everything blends in real smooth for us. Last part of this is we have 7mm fire eyes, and the only critical thing that I have for advice on this is do not use a runny glue. It will go all over your fly, and then your fly, or all over the head of your fly, and then the head of your fly winds up being like a brick, and just does not give you the swimming motion that you want out of it. For this, I'm using, it's just a Gorilla Glue. It's thicker. I'll show you here once I get this glove put on. We'll flip this around, and you can see the glob on there. It doesn't run, it doesn't, like Zap-A-Gap would. If I were to use Zap on here, stuff would have already been dispersed and been all over the place. So try to find a glue that's a little bit thicker that will glob up for you, and it just makes it so much easier to work with, and it doesn't spread all over the head of your fly. and then just take your scissors, tap this into place. You don't have to press it in or anything. There's enough glue on that to where it's going to hold it. If you want to, you can finish it up with some UV clear cure if you want. I typically don't. I leave it just this glob and the eyes stay on just fine for me. There we go. And another nice thing about this Gorilla Glue is you don't have to feel rushed, because, you know, sometimes when you're using the Zap, it will kick and dry extremely fast, and sometimes you may wind up being a little bit late if you're fumbling around like I tend to do with grabbing eyes out of the packet and everything. So this Gorilla Glue kind of works good for guys that are a little bit slower like me. And that should do it right there. You can see the bulk that this fly has. There's a ton of bulk, a ton of motion within the body of it, you know, from the shaggy dub. But that is the finished Rainbow Riffle Special, and that one is going to be one that Uncle Bob is going to take me to school on this year once he comes out in the fall. That's if I decide not to hold out and maybe keep all these for myself. But thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next video.